We are live. Nice. Good, great. I think everything is working just fine, perfectly. The volume. Yeah, forget about that. All right, good people from the internet. Here, A-létheia at the Speak Up Club in our live sessions. Good. In our live sessions, addressing what you guys can see in the title. Very interesting topic that was offered by obviously one of our students. We get so much from our students and the people that normally interact with us that we're just grateful, and we take the advantage of the capacity of having the tools at hand to give back something, a little bit um, of what our students provide us with, which is so much info, so much input, so much um, feedback, things that make us think deeply on stuff that possibly we wouldn't otherwise. So great for our students. I always love to share my time with inquisitive minds of young people that they always keep you in check. I think that gives me a little bit of an advantage compared to, for example, other people my age, since as they don't have to deal with younger people, they don't really get to see things from a perspective of young people. I mean, we forget that we all were kids once, and when we all were all kids, there were different things that were of great passion for us, that we appreciated in great deal, and we spent hours doing that, practicing that, listening to that, watching that, whatever. You know what I mean? We're speaking about everyone my age had to be alive at a time in which um, things, for example, like movies like Back to the Future were on. Movies like Moonwalk, movies like E.T. Yeah, I'm that old. And in such movies, I mean, music was there, doing great part of the culture that we all share back then, right? That's globally. But then again, we have the specific local representations of culture that we all know happens. No matter where you grew up, you had a particular time that everyone around your place, if you were my age in the 80s, everyone around that age were listening to this specific type of music and this specific type of bands or trends, etc., etc., etc. You know, listening to music basically is the whole situation of sharing art from the perspective of audio appreciation and contextualized to whichever cultural expression you're interested in, and that's a phenomenon that is completely inherent to our time, in not in the times in which music was invented. At least music, as we understand music, was invented. In that time, long time ago, music was appreciated by the people who could play music. So of course, most people learn how to play music if they wanted to listen to music. Of course, the best musicians were the ones that captivated people's imaginations, minds, and passions just because they were capable of giving music in such level that people needed to appreciate, no matter how complex that music was. But then again, you had the social aspect of music, how music was supposed to be shared with others. And of course, that could not really be necessarily enjoy with intricate melodies. Instead, those were the typical tunes that were considered as the popular ones. You know what I mean? Being popular or popular music was something that have always existed since humans basically have been alive. So an example of that is what you get to see in, let's say, medieval movies, the tavern music, the da 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 from Europe. And then you got, for example, the dance music in any type of tribe, name it African, Asian, Latin American, etc. The drums, those that were ceremonial drums. Then you have the flutes. Those of us that have traveled around Latin America, we know the particular music that is shared all across the mountain, the Andes mountain range, which is the Andean music. And this tune, we all remember the ones that are made with this traditional flutes that were, or flutes or harmonicas. I don't remember exactly what the name of those were, but they song the sound that they have is so peace inducing. That's just beautiful. I love it, and I believe I don't. I really don't know anyone who despises that type of music because it's always awesome. And whoever has traveled around these places, I mean, and we all know that music has that aspect, the aspect of you know being appreciated by those that know a lot about music, and then the aspect of the one type of music that you get to share with a lot of people. That was during the history of music what basically it consisted music consisted of. And of course music that would that could I mean, for some music to be considered a trend, a lot of different situations could happen, right? As for example, the intervention of mecenas, that were people that were in charge of paying artists, among them obviously musicians, and the artists that had the opportunity of having their music be heard in most places were obviously those artists that managed to leave some sort of a trend. And that trend, if people caught on that trend, obviously made it throughout history. And the scrolls that we know, the oldest ones that we know of, are definitely based on on that criteria, right? So we can say like that was the way rankings worked. Today we have the rankings of Spotify and I don't know, iTunes Music, etc. From Apple. Eh, but you had an idea more or less how is it that people used to consider music, and what music was supposed to be popular and what music was not at the end. Then we have the 20th century, and in this part of our history, we all know that situation changed because this time you didn't need to be a musician to have music in your house. Technology allowed us to bring music over by having all the way from the monographs, these ancient uh, sound systems that had the trumpet form speaker. I don't know if you remember the first uh, disc players, also the ones with that had to work with needles. Before that, there was the ones that had to use a particular type of cylinder. They were really dedicated. Not many of them were produced, and that's the reason why the technology moved on quickly to the disc because it was easier to be reproduced anyway. Then you got later on, years afterwards, the radio. And when the radio was there for people to begin checking, Raul, hello, sir. Welcome, welcome in, and enjoy the night, enjoy the topic. So again, when the radio came in to people's houses, It was the complete different phenomenon in itself, since people from many different places around the same country could access to more or less the same thing. That doesn't really mean that all of the music that was played around the country at the time was that. It was just that music that managed to be captured by whomever was in charge of the programming of the radio. So you have at the beginning, radio was not just music all day. Radio was pretty primitive, and it had different services. Obviously, governments were really involved in the radio technology because of the potentiality that the potential, sorry, that the radio had in terms of communication, how it opened ways for the government to communicate easier when it was necessary to um, everyone across the territory of their countries. So yeah, radio was a really important invention. I would say that even better than phones, but I mean, what do we have to compare, right? That one is better than the other. But anyway, for me, radio was better. Um, then afterwards, you got, I mean, you can tell all the history of how music changed the way to be distributed, and how different forms of music came to be or ceased to be because how the systems of how they were reproduced and distributed were affected. An example, you got disco music. I remember reading a little bit about this years ago. Disco music was a phenomenon that began in France because people in France were discriminatory against jazz bands that obviously consisted of black people. And since they will not really allow any American black bands to black jazz bands to come in the bars and play their music to their younger generations of people, they simply just they said no to that, and they blocked many of those options. So what rich kids or simply just kids that could manage to go to have a great time, party time, any kid that wanted that were interested in that, they went to the clubs and they carried on their own discs, their own music in albums, long play. Hello, Mr. Alberto. So they started playing this music there, and obviously, eventually, the whole intervention of the music was not really done on the instruments of music, but on the recording device. And you can tell that from that moment on, music was not just simply being reproduced or done just by musicians. Instead, it was done also by people that were not musicians. And those people that they had obviously were people that had access to the distribution of music, had a lot to do with music catching on or not by trends, making people understanding, getting it, and liking it, loving it, or not. Think about this. There's always been a little bit of a conflict between musicians, pure musicians, and music producers. We don't necessarily look eye to eye with things when it comes to music, and more of that has to do with what I explained at the beginning about doesn't say that situation of living life, sorry, of perceiving the objective of music separately, as for example those musicians that love making music that is complex and intricate and full of art and full of passion, but definitely complex. And then you got that music that is just simply to share with friends at a moment. Of course, those are just principles. From there, we can just simply start dividing things with different layers and layers and layers of quality when it comes to music. We have my time growing up. We have in the audience Mr. Alberto Lee that can actually comment on that if he wants to, regarding the idea of the music that was on in the 80s, right? Music in the 80s, of course, that actually comes from years behind back, in which popular music and cinema worked together, right, to somehow make or merge into pieces of art. We have all movies that had great scores of music from before the 80s. Even, for example, people know with Star Wars, for instance, you got Flash Gordon, you got uh, that song. Oh, okay, everything that was with the Doors on, the Doors, come on. All of that was before the 80s. So you, that is obviously in the Anglo part. In the non-Anglo part, you got also a lot of movies involved in music. You got, for example, the advent of salsa. Salsa is before the 80s, definitely before the 80s. And a lot had to do with movies that were on back then, too. You got the I guess the same thing will happen in Asia, in any type of country, about the type of music and the type of musicians that were general influences for whatever was being produced at the time. Eh, and we all know that the music that was on the radio was copied and imitated constantly by people regular people, like in their garages, working from in their houses with their bands, their own in their own free time. Some of them wishing to make it big themselves by producing new stuff and trying to move on the genre. If, for example, they were playing a type of music that belonged to a particular genre, you had in the 80s the people of the hair metal movement that was short-lived. It was short-lived. You got the people from the metal movement that actually had to change a lot throughout the years. We still have metal, but sounds a little bit different than the original metal. From the metal audience, you had all the different divisions, and of course, we're speaking about music for people that like music. Now, let's say popular music and specifically dance music. You have a lot of different things to say too. In the 80s, if you are from Latin America, you should definitely have a thing to say about all different movements that came from the islands of the Caribbeans. We're speaking about Puerto Rico, we're speaking about the Dominican Republic, we're speaking about even countries that share the same coast, like Colombia and Venezuela. And a lot of interesting music came from these places. If you went down south, you have music that, of course, were significant for people from countries like Peru, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile. With these particular songs that, I mean, it was kind of like connected in terms of pace, but it was different in terms of the spirit. I'm comparing here the type of music that you hear in many Caribbean countries, that you have like salsa, merengue, song, etc., bachata, and then you got the Andean music, and then you got down south, the one that I was referring to. I'm comparing both, and with these bands, Let me see if I remember. Francia, you remember one of these classic bands from here down south? The band that they used to play at your school. The name of a band. Da, 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 da. Eh, they dance like this. Da, 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 da. In the school in the south. Yeah, but the name, no. So, well, anyway, I thought I was gonna get some hint. But this type of music, I don't even know a name. I'm really sorry. Should have investigated about that. But it is very popular, and it sounds a little bit like merengue, but it's not. It has the same pace. It has the same rhythm. It could even be danced in the same form, but the spirit of the music is totally different. Mr. Manuel, hello, sir. Enjoy, sir. Any question, please shoot a comment. Thank you. So, yeah, if that was in the 80s, and definitely, definitely, I should have, but later, later for sure, I'm gonna. And I invite you, join us for one. So, speaking about what we were speaking about, oh, yeah, about the 80s dancing music. We got so many different artists that were considered great, and some others that were really, really bad examples. All across Latin America, like the Caribbean and down south. And I remember some of them that universally were definitely loved by their public, and some of them that were not as respected as much. I mean, Hector Lavoe, who wouldn't have loved Hector Lavoe in salsa or Combo de Puerto Rico in salsa? Uh, who wouldn't love later on in the 90s? People like Gilberto Santa Rosa, in my country, people like Los Adolescentes, Dimensión Latina. Then the 2000s, I don't know anything. And that's part of the problem of the title, right? The title is um, music for older people. It so happens that there is a moment that you say you kind of like stop. If you were born in these generations, I mean, if you grew up during the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on, even worse, it happens with the younger generations. Uh, but if you were born during those years, you had something totally different to um, appreciate. Sorry, no, that molded your appreciation of music. It was the fact that now you don't only have music at home, but you can also carry music around. You had Walkman, then it came the Discman, and then afterwards you got MP3. Now you got phones. I mean, come on. Music right now is not even purchased. For me, there was a time in which we had to go to record shops, record stores. There were some of them in my country, in my city, that were even famous. I remember Recordland. I didn't like that one. And I remember this in one famous mall. There was this small shop, but it was famous because of that, because of the records that they sold there. Uh, Skip my mind. If I remember, I will tell. But that place was like a cold place. I remember later on. Anyway, going to a place to buy a record was special. I mean, having to um, sort out between all the different things that they offer, having the chance of actually saying, "Ah, this shop doesn't. This shop sucks. You know, all they have is BS," or the opposite, like, "Wow, if I had all this money." Later on, they had the option for you to check on some of the um, they had like small boxes on the walls for you to check on the albums that they just brought up in new, and you could find, I don't know, 12 option selection for you to check on the new album of whomever. And you have obviously the different genres. You had classic, you had traditional, you got pop, you got rock, you got Latin, etc., etc., etc. And I guess if that happened in my country, it probably happened the same way in any other country, because why not? We're humans. We're supposed to listen to stuff in different genres, and people have different genres in general terms. But you see, in the past, people did not have different genres. That's what I'm trying to explain a little bit. There has been a deface, the audio quality of the sea. Yeah, specifically when we're speaking about audio is one of the factors. That's thank you, Mr. Manuel. Yeah, thank you. That's the good thing about receiving comments because it allows us to progress even better. The audio, as it is, the way we appreciated audio, have made us become nostalgic of music itself, of the way music was appreciated when in the past, then now. And it's weird because progress tells you that technology is supposed to give you, better forms, better ways of appreciating stuff. Like, uh, you get to hear about remasterizations, right? Old stuff that was recorded many years ago, and then later on have been put through new technology that made it sound as if it is new. If it was recorded just new, technology is awesome today to do stuff like that. However, people are still nostalgic when it comes to appreciating music. They say, no, uh, compact disc, that one was the LG, the long play. Compact disc, that's the best. Even if it had that little sandy, dirty sound on the back, like shh, that sounded the best, apparently. Then you have, no, no, CD player. That was the best sound ever. Now that you have the first digital version was the best one, and so on. And I guess that matters because it all depends when you started enjoying music. So in reality, it's not really the music. Music needs to progress with technology. Music, no, sorry, music appreciation will progress with or along society with the different changes that happen in society. But we all know too that there are influences, that there are people behind that normally, push stuff, right? They push stuff to happen. They push certain artists to be on stage. They move them rotation and radio. That was back then. It was this famous story of the first albums of the Beatles that were bought by themselves, by their own production houses, in order to sort of trick the ways in which the sales were representing that the albums were that popular. And of course, afterwards, people started noticing that the Beatles were on. They said, "Hey, this band is very popular. It must be good." People started checking them out, and they said they were really good. So of course, it was like made success. It happens. It keeps on happening. It happened in the times of the Beatles. It probably happened before. It is the rule of the market. It is the rule of the market that whenever you get to see that it's so popular, is because there's a lot, like an industry behind. Weird thing too is that many of those popular ones don't really get to enjoy their popularity. I mean, we as the audience, we assume that if they're popular, they must be rich or they must be happy because at least they're gonna become rich, etc., etc. And we all know there are those stories about so many different artists that didn't have it better, that didn't make it. We all love Michael Jackson. How did he end? He was rich, he became rich. But how did he end? Same situation happened with I don't know, anyone that you find really, really popular in whichever style you like. Again, if you're my age, you probably share some of those tastes with me, right? I mean, when it comes to dancing music, or when it comes to rock music, and you probably have a more like a wider spectrum of different genres that you appreciate. Like myself, I appreciate jazz, I appreciate rock. I mentioned that before. Different types of rock. Being 42 years old, obviously love the Seattle movement of the 90s. I love part, but not all, of the new wave of heavy metal, the same as the new wave of new metal. I love the advent of alternative metal and some of grunge and stuff like that. Yeah, Raul is there. So I, apart from that, let's see. I got really fond of alternative music in general, like new folk or indie. Um, and from that moment on, I started drifting away from. Oh, of course, before that, there was my time appreciating Britpop, a lot of it, and till pretty much till the late Oasis. And then, of course, I started drifting away with indie music. And when that happened, that was bad. That was bad because I started, completely cutting off access to all the other stuff that was going on around me. So by 2009, I did not really know what was going on in terms of popular music. I was 29 years old. And I guess, like myself, many people go through that. Like, I mean, after they turn 29, 30, they became alienated from the music that is being produced at the moment. In fact, I would think that it's even sooner. That happens even sooner. That possibly a 25-year-old kid will be thinking, "Oh man, music today sucks." For example, why so fast? Why and why is such a negative reaction in general terms, right? Because I mean, if I think of the time of Leonardo da Vinci and how he listened to whomever he listened at the time, I don't think that he had music that he definitely hated in comparison to music he definitely loved so often. I don't think so. I believe that that will have to be like him actively going bar after bar and bar after bar, just checking on who was playing the lute. That was one form, right, in terms of popular music. Then, of course, we didn't live in those years, and we don't know. But we could tell that, I mean, if he was such an advanced artist in many different forms of art, he could definitely have good appreciation of music too. This is one thing that I guess happens when you love music. Is I guess there are different forms of being a music lover, but if I have to count on the ones that I know, you got those types of people that love music because of memories, and then you got those people like myself that love music because something weird about our ears. So I need to confess a little bit. My wife said that this is something that is not normal because my brain is not normal, and that is possibly the reason why I am that way in terms of how I do appreciate music. I am quite fixated with how I listen to music because I'm extremely delicate with my ears. My ear tube is the cylinder, basically before I get to my eardrum, is super tiny, super tiny, so much that I cannot wear the new technology of the earbuds. I cannot wear them. I can. They don't fit. And for me, it's a tragedy because my wife gave me a new pair for as a present, and I'm not able to wear them because they hurt. They hurt. My ear cylinder is just extremely tiny, and as it is, I remember as a kid, I did have a bit of not so such nice, let's say, memories of certain moments in which I was forced to listen to stuff that I didn't want to listen to, and of course that affected my moods, and that affected the way I appreciated stuff. And of course, I started realizing that music could be used as a tool to, like, shut out stuff that you don't want around you, like maybe thoughts or maybe even sounds, or etc., etc. Then, of course, as you wanted to listen to something, you were actively trying to listen to something, you realize that most of the things that were around you were basically chosen by the adults around you. And the adults around me were my family, obviously, like it is for every person. And from my family, I guess, like in every other family back in the 80s, this is true that as it is a big family, you get to be exposed to a variety of genres. So you got the popular traditional styles, the crappy styles. Every generation have their own crappy type of music, the music that's so cheap but it's very popular. Then you got CMN, and then you got for example, pop, or the hits, the global hits, the local hits, etc., etc., etc. Right? So I obviously being exposed to this type of music, I thought that all music that existed there, that was there, was just that. But because my family was very fortunate of making me travel very often when I was a kid, I realized that no, that was not true. The more I traveled, the more I saw people, the more I realized that there was other type of music, and the more I was surprised by so much stuff that I didn't like. I was more aware of the music that I didn't like than the music that I liked. So I realized that there was obviously something different between my way of appreciation of music to the way people around me, especially the adults around me, appreciated music. In fact, some of them, I realized, were not really listening to the music that they were playing. Some of them, they just had music on because it was like soundtrack to whatever situation they were living. Some of that soundtrack was awful. Anyway, and what I mean by awful, I'm speaking about, again, this cheap stuff that you get to hear everywhere. And you move on then to the time in which I had the option to control some devices from which I could listen to music. So again, me, a little bit older, checking on the radio. And what was the stuff that I found that was cool? I think that actually before that was some presents that my mom gave me that unwillingly, like, put a seat on me, like, considering like there was other stuff. I remember my first album was the single album of Tarzan Boy. It's Tarzan Boy. Oh, that song. Yeah, I got the album, and it actually was in animal print. Crazy because it was Tarzan. I didn't know that Tarzan had to go with animal print. Anyway, I had that album, white. Anyway, I at that time I received a cassette of Menudo. That was Ricky Martin's generation, Menudo. So of course I said, okay, this is like kids music, and kids music is different than adults music, so it must be cool. because I don't like adults music. For me it was like do or not. Like if you're gonna appreciate music, you're gonna have to appreciate music as you need to, and you definitely need to appreciate it different than how the people around you were listening to it. So yeah, I don't know if any other kid had the same appreciation, but I believe that most kids at the time were really happy by listening to Menudo, listening to these cool songs from those times, like 100 Balloons, Forever Young, Big in Japan. Those worldwide big hits. And I keep going to Anglo because, again, it's global, right? Global ones. And a lot of them were obviously in English. We all knew the Queen, for instance, even though Queen was a British band. We all knew Queen back in whatever country I was into. And even though people around me were listening to Vallenato or Cumbia, they still knew who Queen was. They still knew who even Billy Idol was. So, yeah, those were global hits that people could appreciate everywhere because, again, obviously they were pushed on the different areas for you to appreciate them. However, for me, finding the music about like this was a great escape from the hell of the type of music that I was exposed to constantly. I didn't really like them. And obviously, the more I listened to music on my own, the more I gravitated to heavier styles. So of course, rock was a big thing for me. Was once I turned 12. Once I turned 12, you're a certified rebel, so you have to be a rocker. And rockers sounded like badass. Though I wasn't badass. I was a very dedicated boy. Still, I felt that my music had to be, that way. I remember back in those years in my city, there was this radio station that used this slogan: "The music that your parents do not like." So come on, that was supposed to be the music that I love, and I actively listened to some radio programs that they had in the 90s, just until about 1997, they started playing The Noise. And I said, just a moment there. I know this is popular among kids, but I really don't see anything interesting about this. I mean, I got this kid rapping, sort of, almost shouting and singing at the same time. That's the three things at the same time. Out of tune, that's very important to consider, with a really rudimentary but catchy beat, the tu patu patu, with almost none other different type of sound or music to compensate or to orchestrate whatever this beat was. So it was just the voice, out of tune, and this beat. So that was the noise. That was the introduction of reggaeton to me, and that was again back in those years, 1997. I don't know if they came out in 1997, but that's the time that I got to hear it because of some friends, and I hated it. And I hated it the fact that, again, this came out in the same radio station that had this, promotion that I used to proudly feel, as the reason why I listened to that radio station. So not cool that they betrayed me with that thing. But then again, why is it that me at 17 was so picky with music? Because every kid loved this. It was weird, but every kid loved this. Whenever they had this on in a party, it was great. And the reason why it was great, you'll think it's silly, but it's effective. Well, salsa, which it was at the time also very popular for parties, was kind of difficult for you to learn how to dance if you're not really a person to that can catch the key clave in salsa, and you can get lost easily. And if you are distracted by music like myself, you also can get lost. So reggaeton, on the other hand, not like that. Reggaeton is just that beat, and you don't really have to do much in reality if you're a man. If you're a girl, on the other hand, you got an invitation to do all the stuff that you will not dare do ever. The salacious part of that ticked me off from the very beginning. I did appreciate, some naughtiness when it came to music in terms of the lyrics that you can use or the insinuation you can make with the manipulations of instruments, etc., etc. However, too much of it was distracting to the fact of enjoying music. I don't want to be thinking about something that sounds sexualish while I'm listening to music all the time when I'm doing whatever I'm doing. Not really into it. Okay. But reggaeton had that from the get go, not because of the lyrics, however, because, well, yeah, then at the beginning of reggaeton, the noise was apparently more like fighting music between bands in Puerto Rico, but then it quickly got changed into the whole misogynia rap style that we know of reggaeton, right? So the lyrics, and when the lyrics were so obviously corny, including, I mean, I have to say that they were corny, but obviously obsessive with the sexual content. I could not really appreciate that, plus the beat, plus the fact that the aesthetics that reggaeton had were simply outputting for me. They were simply just, showing me as if the role model I must follow was that one of the thought, which for me was obviously the wrong message. I mean, the thought has never been a role model for me. And I know that for some kids it was, but it was stupid to think that a thought can be a role model at all. I mean, you said the expression badass, but you know that you don't mean that way badass, like a thug life badass. No one wants to become millionaire by looking like Snoop Dogg or doing, stuff like having to tattoo your face in order for people to appreciate you. You don't need to get to those levels. There are people that have the call to do that, and we appreciate them for that. Great. But we don't need to do that in reality. And most people actually think twice to, daring doing something like that, especially if you don't have talent. People with talent are just few. Not every person has the talent to become the best guitar player ever, even if you dream that you are gonna. Now, some people are meant to do that. And again, you need to be lucky enough to be in a position in which you can project yourself, be it by your own means or by someone that supports you. Still, some people are not meant to be the best musicians ever. I know so many great musicians that I play with, that I saw playing, that never made it. Great guitar players, great bass players, played in different bands that never made it. Me, obviously, my band too. There was a time that we had about 35 written songs. We didn't even make an album. So that happens, right? We know that there's some people that makes it, and there are people that the people that make it, people that don't, right? But those that make it, those that are part of history of music, you have among them those that have left a trace, that have been basically influential for whatever people end up producing later on. And it's so terrible that during those years, after the 97 for me, things went that direction so badly. But it was impossible not to, since economically speaking, it was totally explainable how reggaeton caught on so easily, as the distribution of the reggaeton was at the same time the distribution that music produced played in discos and clubs at the time was basically commercialized and pretty trendy. And of course, we all know if it comes training in the place that you celebrate and share with your friends, you will choose that piece to make it a part of your memory. So, yeah, obviously, a lot of different kids began to say that, come on, I mean, if we're gonna make music, we're gonna make music that's popular. And what's more popular than reggaeton? So many different other styles were influenced by reggaeton. And I'm really not crapping on reggaeton just because I hate reggaeton, though I do hate reggaeton. I'm using reggaeton simply as one example because the same can be applied to different other crappy genre styles everywhere. Let's make a little change. Let's go to a style that I love. For example, rock. Just to say that I'm crapping all over reggaeton, and you know it's gonna be like I'm biased. But let's go to the rock, for instance. I love rock. Obviously, it's one of the things that I said from the very beginning. One of my first references. However, when it comes to modern current today rock, it's difficult for me to mention any single current now just fresh band. Possibly the bands that I like the most have years in the market already. Okay, one of the ones that I'm following a lot lately is um, Behemoth. I think that's the name of the band. I have problems to remember it. You see, I will never forget Alice in Chains, but I have problems with remembering Behemoth. Another one that lately got my attention is, and I love their sound, is Gojira. But Gojira have been on for a while, quite a while now, more possibly 10 years. I don't know. Band, sorry, Police. Yeah, is another band that just now, I just begin to enjoy, and I know that they are really new, but then again, they are not. They have more than 5 years going. So you see my point here. When it comes to music today, I cannot say anything at all about something that is being produced today because, firstly, I feel that there's such a gap in years to catch up that I don't have the time. Simply, I don't have the time, and that's one thing. Who has the time to catch up? Now, you probably say, "Well, what if you just simply listen to whatever is on the charts?" The charts. One of the other things that I hate about music appreciation today is that it evolves similar to how it evolved with the things about medicine. Technology allows you to measure everything in numbers pretty easily, but you cannot really think that a life is a bunch of numbers. So if you go to the doctor and the doctor stares at a computer throughout the whole um, checkup, barely sees you, and just tells you that you have whatever because of the exam result that that person has on the computer. If that is the type of doctor you have, go to a different doctor. Do yourself a favor. So that's one way of appreciating life. You get statistics, you get numbers, you get data. You take decisions based on the best strategy, considering what the data is reflecting. Music, can you really measure music by data? People today know of the best bands in rock simply because of the best hits that, of course, come to be the ones that have the most likes in whichever platform you use. Again, iTunes or Spotify. That doesn't really mean that that's the best thing that ever. If you want to check out the best thing, you're gonna have to make the effort of going one and then the other and then the other, album per album per album per album. Speaking about rock, if you go and check on artists simply by name, you realize that wow, many different artists have actually been involved in the production of many different things across different genres also, and that happened a lot in the last 20 years. Why? Technology as well. So technology, economy, two factors that are involved in music appreciation that if you I mean, if you want to speak about why is it that some things are popular and other things aren't, and you don't consider those two things, that you're just simply not really having a serious conversation. We need to consider these points too. So I think that people like myself have been, let's say, removed from the market. Simply, we have been removed from the market. Our own tastes have stuck simply like different codes that filter the way we get to see, and of course we get to appreciate. When I say see, I'm speaking about appreciation. Listen, in this case, we get to appreciate music. And it's hard for us to open the door to any new stuff simply because time. We do not have the time. We listen to the new stuff from the old stuff that we know, the old bands, the old artists, the old solo singers or producers, etc. But new, brand new, how? There are ways, of course. There are ways. We have to go out of our way to check them. I used to check out a couple of web pages that from now on, from time to time, they are drop pretty cool stuff when it comes to the indie area. But then the indie area became so similar in sound that that also, I mean, I also fell out with the that genre in itself, and that was possibly over 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm only 42 years old, and I cannot really claim that I know an artist in music that is producing music now from the last 6 years. I can't. I can't. And the same thing happens with not even my favorite genres. Not even. If that happens to me, that I get to listen to a lot of music, because that's one thing I never expressed before. But being a musician myself, though I don't have my instruments now, but I'm a musician myself, I love music. I listen to music most of the time whenever I have the time. I listen to a lot of different things, and still, I don't have the time. I don't have the patience, and I don't understand. That will be the last factor. Music today, I don't understand it. Music that it is obviously produced out of the whim of producers that, of course, measure numbers and saying that this is the tendency of where music is supposed to go. So that's how we're making your album. That's how we're making your music. Many different good artists are involved in these productions, and they don't sound well. And again, you probably, people in the audience will say, well, how can you say that you don't like new music if you just said that you don't do you're not even considering making that effort of checking new music, etc., etc.? Yeah, obviously you probably said that, but it's not that I don't listen to whatever people play. I don't need to go out of my way to go and check new music, but just if I just simply listen to what other people do. Most of the time, people do that all the time. They're basically invade your space by playing their stuff loud. So I know what it's on. I know what's on. Everybody's playing it. Hate it. I don't think that I need to go and check their names, the names of bands or artists, singers, producers. I don't need to. They drop it, I forget it because that's what I mean by saying that I don't really know the names of the people and the type of music that they do, and I don't understand it. I listen to whatever they play, and I think is firstly repetitive, secondly lackluster. It has no shine. It has no spirit, and it's weird that I think about it like that way because it actually makes me feel quite old, and I'm not that old. I'm 42 years old. Again, was born in the 80s. So if anyone in the audience feels that way, connects to what I just said, sounded a little bit like a rant. Speaking of a rant, someone I check on from time to time ranting that speaks about this topic, Rick Beato in YouTube. Check him out, and as well as El Chombo in Latin America. Those two guys, they're really cool when making this type of analysis. So in Spanish and in English, both of them, check them. And they do mention or make analysis of situations similar to this. The case of Beato make comparisons and even listens to the charts of top tens, top 20s, and both him and I bring agreements to the new things that are out there, and we really think that it's crazy how much money is being produced on stuff like that. How many people actually like that in reality? So weird. But anyway, all people will be like that from now on. We'll always be grumpy and touchy and picky when it comes to checking our music. Movies as well. It's weird. I hope that my good luck of having to deal with you know young people as being a teacher allows me to not drift away too far away and to be seen as some sort of the old guy, boring old guy that nobody understands as listening to that stuff as crappy. I hope that I get to find in my students, from time to time, a good recommendation. So, if you guys, considering now what I just told you, if you guys have great consider it with great recommendations, good music to tell, to share, great quality music, please do because otherwise, we as generations will never connect. Not the same bar for sure. But at the same time, it's not bad. I mean, kids need to go to their own bars. Just kidding, anyway. People, remember that we are here at the Speak Up Club, the service that A-létheia is offering for anyone that is interested in learning a language just simply by holding a conversation. You see, you can learn so much simply by holding a conversation. So we are offering you the capacity of doing that, learning a lot because we don't just have the conversation, we actually make you think a lot. And that process of making you think a lot is not so simple. That's the reason why it is a service. So we offer you this, and from this service, we're having this abstract that we having on Friday lives for the Speak Up Club. So we invite you, if you want to participate in the Speak Up Club in sessions that are not that crowded, good enough in terms of the quantity of people, so you can practice with other people as well, myself or another presenter, and on topics that are really cool, by doing really cool activities, but mostly by speaking. So, yeah, we invite you here to the Speaker Club. We are opening new versions different times. We have Mr. Espinosa on YouTube. Hello. Okay, let me see the question that he has. Which are your favorite music genres, and do you have a favorite album? No, man. No, no, your question is cool. What's up? Thank you. That's a cool question, Mr. Espinosa. Okay, favorite genres. Well, we have to put them as ranking, like from top to bottom. Let's say top. Obviously, it must be rock, right? But rock for me, it's a situation of moods. Sometimes I'm in the mood of heavy. But I don't, heavy. The problem with heavy rock is that you have neighbors. That's the problem. So then I got different from heavy. I go all the way to alternative metal. Okay, so that would be alternative metal, the second of my favorites of all metals. Then of course I love speed metal. I love doom metal. I love some experimental metal and industrial metal as well. But some bands, not like the whole genre as it is. Then you go to alternative. Now, alternative and grunge both can be right there. It's just not really the problem with. Okay, it's not that it's a problem. It's just that alternative and grunge for me is the type of music I can share with people. So for me, that's dancing music. I can play this with everyone and everyone will enjoy it, and that would be cool. And I love it, right? But if I had to appreciate, really appreciate rock, I'll go more heavy or I'll go more on the experimental part. And that experimental part will be with indie rock, but classic indie rock. Interesting. Classic indie rock. That's so weird to say. In reality, that will be like a series of bands that only I will know. I think that there has to be one day that I would sit down and write down these people, these bands, so I can actually, who knows, maybe share that in a live. That'll be interesting, Mr. Espinosa. You give me quite a homework. By the way, oh yeah, this is our cat, our child in this house. It's called Silent Bob, shortened now officially to Sai, and he's behaving today. So thank you. So okay, then I mentioned indie, right? Eh, and right there, I have alternative Britpop. Okay, alternative Britpop. And then right there, I got high quality pop. And what do I mean by high quality pop? I'm speaking about those great bands, pop bands, that were not rock just for this in the 90s. Bands like Hall and Oates, bands like The Outfield. You probably say, who's that? Hall and Oates, you know, Man Eater. Oh, there she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, there she comes. She's a man eater. That's high quality pop. You got among them uh, one of my favorite bands from Britain, Theater for Fears. Come on. You got Seal that comes actually from the same group, but he moves on to the 90s to do other stuff. Um, you got so much good stuff. from that area. You got the alternative then, REM, for instance, great band, and like REM, so many. Um, then you got those one hit wonders from the 80s and 90s that were awesome. Some of them more than one hit wonders, like the case of Counting Crows. I don't know if you remember Mr. Jones, one of my favorite songs from that time, and so on. Then coming down, I will have to say that I got um, Latin rock. Latin rock, in fact, good Latin rock, of course, from different generations. I love it, obviously. And then coming down a little bit, I will go for more dancing music, and obviously for dancing music, I will choose. Let's see, that's difficult. Okay, I got, for instance, for example, for Latin, that's Latin music. I love salsa brava or the like. You know, salsa that sounds like salsa brava. There is a band, young band that I like a lot. It's called Los Hacheros. I recommend them a lot. They're great, great. My God, a bunch of students and great musicians. They all play different instruments in the band, and they play live salsa. And when you see live salsa, it's man, it's so great and enticing. So of course, how come I wouldn't really enjoy this band for sure? So I got that. I got Latin American rock, specifically Argentinian rock. I have some bands from here, from Ecuador, that I love. There is, for example, my favorite band is Da Palm. Another one is Can Can. So now you know. Then after alternative rock, Latin American rock, down. Okay, I said dancing music. Well, of course, merengue from the 80s, specifically from the 80s, merengue from the 80s. Then down, I'll go to uh, reggae, obviously, why not? Classic reggae, some classic reggae, sorry. I actually don't like preachy reggae. Then down. Oh, I forgot jazz. Jazz is behind all that. Jazz, I love it all through. Okay, and for me, jazz is and classic music. They are both alternatives I'm constantly listening to. But then in the bottom, the stuff that I never listen to is, or that I listen to least, is whatever is on the radio today. So if it is on the radio today, or if it is the soundtrack of the Comisariato, I hate it. I'm really sorry. Um, just it's impossible. I mean, it's just crappy music. It doesn't have any soul. It just I'm sorry. I don't know why I have to apologize for stuff like that, but it's true. I mean, everything that you listen to in the radio, in buses, it's just crap. It's a shaming. So yeah, that will be the list of things that I love in terms of music. So that's it. That is the problem with music, new music, and all people. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, we got the speaker club open for new hours, new schedules, receiving new people. So we have different things that we're working there, and we hope that you guys come join us. And we are going to keep on doing these live sessions. Remember, next week is the Q&A, and that Q&A is gonna be interesting. We will obviously announce it later on, but this one is the second round of good stories, wonderful stories. We made the first round last week, and it was One Piece and other wonderful stories. This time around is specifically wonderful stories. So we're gonna be branching out on different stories, not so much One Piece because we already spoke about that one. Okay, so We hope to see you there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Be seeing you soon. Great people. And we got bye bye, Mr. Espinosa. Bye bye, everyone else. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Raul, Mr. Manuel, Mr. Shamey, and everyone else. Thank you. Well, bye bye. Good luck. Let's close it here. Yes. And here. Bye bye, people. Yes. Yes.